Hey, I'm Scott, and welcome to the YouTube channel for Champion of Aging. So today I want to talk about training splits, and in this regard, we're talking about how many days per week you should lift weights. So there's a lot of information out there on social media and here on YouTube about what the best training split is for people over 50, over 60, and whatnot. So I wanted to address that because here's the bottom line. There is no one best training split for everybody. So let me tell you why. First of all, the best training split for you depends on where you are in your training. If you are brand new to training, let's say you're a 50-year-old man, you're basically close to my size, about 6 feet tall, maybe you're 200 pounds. And you now want to focus on building strength. Let's say you've never done any strength training before, or it's been a few years. What you want to do initially is train a full body routine 3 days a week. And that has been demonstrated to allow people to build a significant amount of strength and muscle over the span of about 4 to 6 months. And that's if you just employ a pure strength training approach where you're employing the squat, the deadlift, the bench press, and the overhead press. And with those lifts, you're basically doing three working sets of 5 reps, except for the deadlift where you might just do 1 working set of 5 reps. And in the initial stages, you're adding weight to the bar each workout until that becomes untenable, which might be within a couple months for, say, the overhead press, and then you adjust the programming. But for most people who have never done any strength training and they're 50 years old, probably into their early 60s, the best approach is a 3-day full body routine approach where you're training Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. For people who are a little bit older, you might, and this depends on how well your recovery goes between workouts. Initially, you can probably handle that 3-day-a-week program for at least a couple months. And then after that, you might want to switch to just a 2-day-a-week program so that you get enough rest in between your training sessions. If you're a little bit older, let's say you're over 70, it's basically at discretion. So the first few weeks when you start training in a general strength training program, if you've never done it before or it's been a long time, your first few weeks are basically just to start at conservative weights and learn how to do the movements correctly. The squat and the overhead press in particular are quite technical. And so you want to learn how to do them properly with fairly light weight on the bar. And as you're adding weight at a very conservative pace. So even if you're 70, you can probably get away with training 3 days a week in that initial phase. And then over time, as the weight gets much heavier on the bar, you might need more time to recover between workouts. And that's all going to be dependent on how well you're eating and how much sleep you're getting. If you're not getting enough sleep, that's going to affect your recovery as well. Okay, so beyond that, once you get to a phase where you've added a good amount of muscle and strength over the span of, say, 4 to 6 months, and I'm speaking from experience here, when I initially started training a few years ago, and I've not been as consistent as I would like to be with my training until basically now. But when I initially started, I was about 205 pounds, and I started on this particular program. And within just about 2 or 3 months, I was able to get my deadlift up from, I think I was probably able to do 225 for 5 reps, and I got it up to 275 for 5 reps pretty quickly. And then over time, I eventually took that up to 325. Now, I only started training the deadlift when I was 55, 56 years old, and I'm 60 now. And that's while dealing with what I refer to as a glass back. I've dealt with a back issue for over 20 years. I believe that's a combination of my former life as a competitive golfer and due to my job sitting in front of a computer all day long. So that combined to result in a herniated disc many years ago, and that's something I've had to deal with ever since. So my training with that and the squat have not been as consistent as I'd like. And then last year, my training really got off kilter due to a number of issues, which I won't get into now. But so far this year, I've been training pretty consistently for the last several months. I had to wait until basically April to start deadlifting again. My previous deadlift prior to that was in September last year. And so here I am now. My programming is now evolving to where I am splitting my training between upper and lower body. So, and this all depends on my week ahead as well. Do I have a travel day or not? Because I do travel for work, usually just for one day at a time. And so I will split up my training with 2 upper body days and 2 lower body days. And then I try to fit the deadlift in on its own. I like training the deadlift all by itself because it's produces such an amount of stress on the body when you start training at a very high weight. And for me, that's when it's approaching, once it gets over 275 for a set of 5, that's when it starts to become really taxing. So I will train the squat and some other leg exercises one day, and then the upper body workout will either focus on the bench press or the overhead press, depending on the day, and those days will switch later in the week. And then, like I said, I'll try and get the deadlift in usually on Saturday. So that routine works pretty well for me. That gives me plenty of time to recover between workouts since I'm not training the full body. Your schedule may demand that you set up a different routine. If I know that I'm going to travel one day during the week, I will try to at least train 3 times during the week, and I might do the squat with the bench press on one workout, maybe the deadlift another workout, and then the squat and the overhead press on another workout. So this all can vary from week to week for me. But as long as I'm pursuing the general programming that I'm trying to achieve, either adding weight, sets, what have you, and I'm seeing results, then I'm doing pretty good. Now, if you're going to be training on once you get through that initial strength training phase after 4 to 6 months, and you want to switch over to, say, a bodybuilding type of routine, your programming might look a little bit different because bodybuilding requires a different kind of stress on the body, which usually leaves you fairly sore with the body parts that you're training on any particular day. So for example, if you train a leg day and you train the squat and then you train a bunch of other exercises for a lot more reps and a lot more sets, your legs are going to be very sore, and you're going to need probably more time to recover between that workout and the next time you train your legs. So you have to keep that idea in mind as well. Now, here's the issue with people that are over 60. We have to continue to expose ourselves to training with heavy weight, or else we start to detrain fairly quickly. So for example, let's say you get your bench press up to 200 pounds for a set of 5, and then you want to switch over to a bodybuilding routine where you're focused more on lighter weight and higher reps. You'll find out that over a couple weeks, if you don't continue to hit that 200-pound mark with a set of 5, because you're focused on lighter weight and higher reps, you're not going to be able to do that set of 5 at 200 probably after about a couple weeks, because the body starts to adjust. And if you're not exposing yourself to that heavy weight, you're just going to start losing your strength a little bit. So you have to keep that thought in mind. That's why when I tend to switch over to focusing more on hypertrophy, I will still try and do at least one exercise where I'm exposed to heavier weight in that 3 to 5 rep range, and then I'll do some assistance exercises. So let's say I'm worried about training chest, so I'll continue to train the bench press at a heavier weight, but then I might do some narrow grip bench presses for with lighter weight and more reps. I'll do some dips and some exercise like that, and I might even throw in a set or 2 of push-ups. So obviously I'm going to be training at lighter weight with that as well. So this is the bottom line. In spite of what you might be seeing on the internet, especially here on YouTube, there is no one perfect training split for those of us over 50, over 60, and beyond. It all depends on your ability to recover, and it depends on the type of training that you're actually doing and where you are in the training cycle. So keep that thought in mind. Okay, so that's all I've got for today. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and check out championofaging.com. I've got an ebook that I've just put together that you can get for absolutely nothing, and you'll also get signed up for my Champion of Aging Tactics newsletter as well. So check out the website and consider signing up for the newsletter and getting that ebook. And we'll see you down the road.